Hey, this is Kasey Mock with the Landowner Insider podcast. So this week we've got probably the hottest topic in all of agriculture and wildlife, and that is the New World Screwworm. So about a month ago, I interviewed Dr. T.R. Lansford for the podcast. So go back and listen to that one or watch it on YouTube with Dr. T.R. Lansford. He is the head veterinarian and executive director of the Texas Animal Health Commission. And we talked about the New World Screwworm with respect to livestock. Now, that was when the screwworm was still, 100 miles south of the border between Texas and Mexico. Well, today is Thursday, June the 4th. Yesterday, Thursday, June the 3rd, 2026, New World Screwworm was confirmed in a beef cow calf in Zavala County outside of La Pryor, Texas. That means it's here. And so I just wrapped up a 2.5-hour conversation with Macy Ledbetter. Macy Ledbetter is a top wildlife biologist, private wildlife biologist here in the state of Texas. And Macy and I talked for 2.5 hours about CWD, about EHD, about anthrax, and about screwworms. But it took us a couple of hours to get to the screwworms. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump this week into just that conversation about screwworms. So this will be the freshest interview you've heard about the New World Screwworm with respect to wildlife management. So if you're a wildlife manager, deer exotics, a wildlife manager in the state of Texas, you're going to want to listen to this one now. And then next week, we'll put out the full 2.5-hour episode so you can watch the long form of that. But we didn't want you to have to wait 2 hours in conversation to hear the screwworm parts of our discussion. So this week's an abbreviated episode. It's going to feel a little bit out of sequence because we wanted to get straight to the screwworm parts of our episode with Macy Ledbetter. Reach out to myself or Macy for information. Let's hope this deal doesn't last as long as it did in the 60s and 70s, but pretty big issue facing Texas wildlife managers. Welcome to the Landowner Insider, the podcast for Texas landowners who want to stay up to date with current events shaping our state. Here we talk about issues that actually impact your Texas lands, markets, water, wildlife, policy, and the decisions that are shaping our state. I'm your host, Kasey Mock with the Mock Ranches Group, and in each episode, we sit down with the people who are shaping the future of Texas. We're not afraid to ask the hard questions. This is the Landowner Insider podcast presented by the Mock Ranches Group. Perhaps the biggest thing I've ever seen in my life of that's going to impact agriculture and wildlife alike is the New World Screwworm.
Yes, sir.
Because it's non-discriminatory. It doesn't just affect sick animals. And the first New World Screwworm since the early 1960s was found and confirmed in South Texas yesterday, June 3rd, 2026. In a baby calf in Zavala County, La Pryor, Texas. Big deal.
Big deal. Huge deal.
Huge deal. I had, for the listeners, if you go back 4 episodes, I think, 3 or 4 episodes, I interviewed Dr. T.R. Lansford with the Texas Animal Health Commission. Dr. Lansford was generous to drive in just like you are, Macy, and he sat in that chair. We talked for almost 2 hours about the livestock side of the New World Screwworm. So you and I will spend most of our time on the wildlife side of it, which I think is probably a much greater risk, to be honest with you, economic risk than there is on the livestock side. Just because they're livestock, we can put our hands on them every day. We can pin them up. My cows, I can go get cows. I can cake them into the lot. I can dry lot them if I need to. Mm-hmm. If I absolutely had to, I could dry lot them. I can put eyes on them every day. I can run them through the work and shoot. They're easy to treat. You can ranch cattle, sheep, goats, cattle, horses, with screwworms. They did it in the 50s. They did it in the early 60s. Our grandparents did it. Had a lot more cowboys probably then.
All right.
That could rope and tie one down and actually doctor. But you can do it. Whitetail deer, bighorn sheep, exotics, out-edge sheep, nilgai antelope. Can't doctor those. So New World Screwworm, if you never lived through it, which I didn't, you didn't either, I don't believe. I hear stories from the 50s and 60s of just almost no deer from our grandparents and some of the old timers. I've been around my whole life in hunting camps and on ranches. I hear stories of almost no deer. And used to, I would think, well, their habitat was different. They didn't feed them. They didn't manage them. There wasn't as much brush. You look at the old aerials of the ranches, and there's 80% more brush today with juniper and mesquite than there was then. And kind of just thought that was the reason. And they shot everyone they saw, whatever the case was. But as I've had more of those conversations in the last 6 months, I mean, you find out that the screwworms actually killed a lot of the fawns.
Almost everything. But yeah, in particular, whitetail deer. Parks and Wildlife has put out some information saying that they anticipate 80% mortality on the fawns. And yeah, the timing of the screwworm right now could not be worse.
Because fawns are dropping right now.
Because the fawns are dropping right now.
We started this week here in Erath County. We started dropping fawns.
That's right.
Based on gestation, our rut here is early November. We started dropping fawns this week.
That's right. That's right. And in Zavala County, they'll start later this month. The peak fawning date in Zavala County is July 15th.
Okay.
In other words, that's when the majority of the fawns hitting the ground. So in June, they're going to start hitting the ground. And so the timing could not be any worse from that perspective. And that's how it works. It takes out all your production, or the majority of your production first, being the fawns. And then, in late August, early September, we have the bucks rubbing their velvet.
Well, talk real quick, before you go there, real quick about the fly, the maggot, how it works, why it targets them. Just talk about the fly a little bit, the parasite itself.
Okay, great. First, I want to compliment you and Dr. Langford did a great job. I listened to that episode a couple of times, and y'all both did a great job, and he really went into the biology of it as well. So I know I'm going to be repeating some of the same material, but the fly, the female fly, finds an opening on a host. And a host means anything that bleeds. So any warm-blooded.
Warm-blooded,
yeah. Not mammal, but warm-blooded. So we're talking about a bird, talking about an armadillo, a cotton rat, a jackrabbit, a javelina, feral hog, and aoudad, all that stuff. Yeah. So anything that bleeds is subject to screwworm infestation, and that includes birds. Now, birds don't typically have a lot of injuries, but I'm talking about bobwhite quail, talking about turkeys, I'm talking about songbirds, mockingbirds, hummingbirds. Again, birds don't have a lot of physical injuries, but they bleed, and they're subject to that. So to your point earlier, when screwworm got here in Texas in 50s and 60s and all the way through the 70s, it devastated everything. But we're here today talking about whitetail deer a lot. So it devastated the deer herd in Texas, generally speaking, to the point, the lowest numbers since recorded history. So Parks and Wildlife started restocking whitetail deer, and they got their seed stock. Think King Ranch, Aransas National Wildlife, South Padre Island Seashore, because they did not have screwworm along the coast because of the wind.
Oh,
the constant wind, that little bitty fly can't handle wind. So that right there is a management tool that you should be aware of. Fans, wind, all of that stuff will help defend against screwworm fly in Zavala County, in Erath County. So if you have horses in a stall, put a fan on them. If you have somewhere that you can move air, move air. You see what I mean?
Yes, sir.
So Parks and Wildlife went to, again, King Ranch, Aransas National, all the coastal counties, and they started catching bucks and does and bringing them all over these different counties and turning them loose to restock post-screwworm. Post-screwworm means once they finally figured out the sterilization, where you
sterilize,
irradiate the male and turn him loose, and then he outcompetes the native, or he overwhelms the native males. So he dies after he breeds. He just falls over dead. He's kind of a one-shot wonder, one and done, and dies. What a miserable existence, but that's how he rolls. And then the female, she lives for, I think, around 2 weeks, give or take, 12, 14 days, looking for a host. Again, anything that bleeds, it has some kind of opening, and it doesn't have to be a wound. It could be your mouth, your eyes, your nose, your anus. So any kind of opening into.
So that's a question I didn't ask Dr. Lansford. I'm glad you're going there. So it can be a natural orifice.
It can be a natural orifice, but they really prefer an injury.
Yeah.
So let's say you have
or an umbilical cord break on it. That's why they killed the fawns. Yeah, that's why they killed them.
That's the big obvious.
That's the big obvious.
Yeah, that's the big obvious. I should have mentioned that, and I failed to. But let's say you have a prolapse. Let's say you have a torn ear tag. You ripped your ear tag out. Yeah.
Big deal.
Or you just put your ear tag in yesterday, It's not healed yet, right? Around that tag itself is raw, bloody, oozy meat,
Sure.
right? A tick falls off. A tick gets pulled off. There is a microscopic hole there. There's a little hole there from the mouth parts of the tick, and that's all the female needs.
Yeah.
And she's going to deposit her eggs. You look at the literature; it ranges from 100 to 300,000. I'm sure it has depending on the female fly, but the egg count is huge. And they put deposit her eggs. Well, then she dies. So now both adults are dead and gone.
Yeah.
But now those eggs pupate or morph into maggots. And as soon as they do that, they have to defend themselves. They have to feed themselves, and they start eating living flesh. They're one of the only animals that do that. Thank the Lord, right? So all the other flies, the house flies, the barn flies, the other maggots you've seen in your life involve death, decay, brown, dead stuff, trash, that kind of stuff, mold, that kind of stuff. But the screwworm only is attracted to living host. So they start burrowing into it. And the reason they're called screwworm is they have these giant fangs. They have these giant teeth. And they grab a hold and they pull themselves internal. They're looking to encapsulate their body as they eat, and they're just drilling into your body, muscle tissue. And remember, there's between 100 and 300,000 of them, right? She's laid. I've seen different numbers, but she's laid a lot of eggs, and all of them they're being morphed at roughly the same time. So you've got all these different maggots drilling into your body, wherever that orifice that she found is, and they're eating you alive. So you as the host animal, it's driving you crazy, right? You're not acting normal. You're not. You're itching. You're burning. It's like having water in your ear, but much worse, right? You're trying to get that sensation out of your. So you'll see these animals acting unnatural. You'll see these animals rubbing their head or rubbing their butt or getting in water, doing really neurotic kind of stuff. So that's your first sign that something's wrong. Why is that deer out there? Why is that cow out there shaking its head and rubbing its head? All day long it's been rubbing its head on that post. You probably need to go check into that pretty dadgum quickly because it's being eaten from the inside out, if you would. So it may be a little hole on the outside where the egg sac got in, but now there's going to be, at this point, there's going to be a cavity or a cavern or a big hole on the inside that you can't see or you may not see. So they're literally eating this animal alive. So let's just say, move on down the progression, the animal dies, falls over, eventually dies. Well, those maggots, as the body cools down, those maggots say, hey, I got to abandon ship.
They leave.
The Titanic is sinking. I got to get off this thing.
The hornfly maggots are coming in now.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, stage 2, the cleanup crew's coming in behind me, and I'm really tired of all these buzzards and all this. I got to get out of here. So they crawl out of the wound, and they fall to the ground, and then there's going to be some level of soil or dirt or leaf material, and they're going to burrow into the top 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch of soil. It just depends on all the makeup. And there they go into the next phase. And what that phase is turning into an adult, an actual fly, and they fly away. And so a dead animal reproduces or causes the next generation of flies. So it's really important that wildlife managers understand.
So that maggot, how long will that maggot live inside the host if the host doesn't die? Do you know?
As long as you can keep that animal alive. I mean, they're going to eat it to the point where the animal does die.
Yeah.
I mean, without treatment. Without treatment.
Yeah, from
that
infection,
animal
it's going to die from something.
It's going to die. Yeah, because they're going to start, let's just say it's on the shoulder. They're going to start rubbing that shoulder raw. They're going to rub the hair off. They're going to rub a bigger sore. And guess what the bigger sore does? Attract more females.
More flies, yeah.
So it's not like one single female lays her eggs and then that cow's done. Once that opening is expanded, and then don't forget there's pheromones, there's smells that flies communicate with.
That's what they're well known as. The smells awful, they say.
That's it. So they put out the text message, hey, we've got a live one over here, guys. So maybe 10 more female screwworm flies come in and bombard that enlarged and opened that the first one's created. Well, now there's 4, 5, 6 more females. dropping all these eggs that we're talking about. See what I mean?
Oh,
so
yeah.
the numbers get exponentially large extremely quick because the pheromones, the scent, the stench attracts additional females. So it's not one female and she's done and the cow's done. It could be numerous females, which turns into hundreds or more maggots eating this animal. So left untreated, they're probably not going to live that long. So I don't know the answer to your question because it depends on where they got hit.
Yeah.
If it's in the navel, if it's in the head, they're not going to live long at all.
Yeah.
But let's say it's on the hip. Let's say it's the lower leg. Well, they could probably live a while, right?
Yeah.
But if you're going to go inside the body cavity, by the navel, or you're going to go in the head by the ear, or an old bull rubs a forehead spot, that animal's dead really, really quick.
So on the wildlife side, we can talk a little bit. We already addressed the deer fawns. The fawns are obviously very, very vulnerable. And so is the doe right there at the point of giving birth too, because she's going to be torn or potentially prolapsed a little bit. Then you've got the bucks that are rubbing off velvet. If it gets in the velvet, I guess it could continue down into the pedicle. If they got in the velvet's falling off and dying anyway.
I don't know this for a fact, but I would assume they would just follow that antler all the way down to the living tissue, right? Because the velvet is living tissue until they rub it off.
Correct.
Now it's no longer living tissue. So if that flies in the area, they're going to continue down the trail, if you would. They're going to follow the main beam to that pedicle. And that pedicle is porous. You know what I mean? You can put your fingernail underneath the antler, the burr of the antler and above the skull.
Oh, yeah.
So that is an opening, and then, of course, in that throes of rubbing the velvet off, did he get a scratch? Yes, they often do because they're fighting. They're rubbing really hard.
Scratches on their forehead, cut their ears.
Is he rubbing on a weesatch? Is he rubbing on a locust tree? Is he rubbing on barbed wire fence? Yeah, yes, all the above. He's going to get a cut, a nick on the back of his ear, on the front of his nose.
Yeah, doe jumps a fence, they scrape their underline, all of it.
All of it, yeah. Inside their back
bucks
leg.
Fighting, stab each other.
All the time, all the time.
Yeah, the I've hunted nilgai bunch. They've got
full of scars.
Big old scars.
Yeah, you're talking about street fight.
The aoudad sheep are the same way, just cut up here, and then you get in the aoudad, and the aoudad live around the desert bighorn, and there's when Texas Parks Wildlife will get involved. That's going to hurt them in their pocket, so that's when they'll get involved.
Right. Yeah, what's left outside of the desert bighorn?
Outside of that, I hesitate to say, but they're probably not going to have a lot of solutions for the white-tailed deer.
If you're following the desert bighorn, just to distract real quick, myobe, the pneumonia, and all that stuff, it literally has cut the desert bighorn population in half. So if there's ever a terrible time for screwworm, which is any time, but if you're a desert bighorn sheep, when you're less than 50% of your population 2 years ago, and now you introduce a flesh-eating flying insect, I don't like the odds. So
good thing about them, they do spend most of their time in pretty windy climates at high altitude.
That's right. Yeah, up high and pretty rugged. Yeah. And they still have some cool weather, and those flies slow down. They're inactive, and that kind of stuff.
We have so many more hosts though than we had in the 50s and 60s. Feral hogs, nilgai antelope, all the exotics, the pure numbers of white-tailed deer, the aoudad sheep. Just so many more hosts.
That's right.
That travel.
That's right. Mobile host. And then, even trailers, trucks and trailers. And we as humans, we're so mobile, and we take all of our animals with us, including pets. How many dogs are in the back of a pickup here today? Thousands.
A whole bunch,
right?
yeah.
And tomorrow they'll be in San Saba at the cattle auction. They'll be, you know what I mean? So there'll be a dog in Del Rio that'll be in Stephenville tomorrow morning. And so you got to be thinking about that. We're a very mobile species now, and we can drive 85 miles an hour down the road. We can be somewhere quick.
What do you think the real risk is to the deer industry in Texas? You and I have talked about this earlier, and didn't want to scare people, but I think it's important to take this deal very seriously.
I agree, and I don't know that the sky's falling, and I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, but I also am not pleased with some of the literature where the other agencies have been real careful to say it's not here, we got it under control, we're organized and we're planned. To me, that that gives a false sense of security to a lot of people. They read that and they take it into heart and they're like, oh, I don't have anything to worry about. They have it under control. They have it covered. I believe that that's a false sense of security. I believe that we should talk about the facts like we're doing today and talk about worst case scenario so that we're aware of it so that we can respond to a worst case scenario. I would love to be wrong, and I will be the first person to come back here and tell you, I'm glad we were wrong. I'm glad I screwed up. I'm glad we were wrong. I'm going to be the first person to be here, come back and tell you, I am so happy I was wrong. But in that regard, I think that there should be a little bit more urgency. I think there should be a little bit more, not scariness, but there needs to be more factual conversations to say, you know, hunting is about a $9 to $12 billion business in the Texas economy. And if screwworm gets out of control, we could lose it in a couple of months. That's a little bit different conversation than what you've been having and reading with people. You see what I mean? So to answer your question, again, the sky is not falling. I don't want to, run out of here hollering in the streets, but I think that people need to take this a little bit more serious, and they need to be aware of what it could get to. And we're not hyperboling. We're not scaring the hell out of people just to get a clickbait. That's not what this is about. I promise you, that's not what this is about. This is about reality. And we have seen this happen before. So it's not science fiction. We're not making this up.
No.
We're not dreaming this up, Kasey. We already know how the book could end. We've read the book. We've seen the book. There's still people that have wrote the book alive today that can sit in this chair and tell you in great detail, graphic detail, what to expect. So we know how the movie and the book ends if we allow it. But thank the Lord that we have more technology, we have more knowledge, we have more experience, and we are better prepared than they were originally. Those poor guys originally, they had no options. There was no treatment. They had to figure it out.
100% reaction.
100% reaction.
Yeah. Dr. Lansford estimated 10 years to deal with this once it's here.
And that should be printed on billboards.
I agree.
That should scare the hell out of everybody.
Yeah, can you imagine the
10 years.
The feeds, you look at the feed stores throughout central Texas Hill Country where cattle numbers are way down because of land fragmentation, cow prices, all the things. Cattle numbers are way down. So the majority of their business is horses and wildlife. And they're selling deer blinds and deer feeders and deer feed and deer corn. And that's a big part of their business.
Big.
You take out a large percentage of the deer, what happens to your local feed store? Then you go to the family ranchers who lease their property out for $10 to $25 an acre to recreational hunters out of the Metroplex that come out and spend their recreational money on leasing your ranch. Plus they go purchase a side-by-side at the ATV dealer and they buy some blinds and they buy some feeders and they're going to Cabela's or the gun store and they're buying guns and they're buying bows every year. You see the economic trickle of this deal?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's huge.
So I think
it's
that should be the billboard.
It is potentially huge. It scares me that, because the large percentage of the ranches that we sell around the state of Texas and the stuff that we participate with out of the state, most of what I work on is wildlife related stuff.
That's right. Recreational
Most of it is recreational properties and hunting is the biggest interest.
100%.
Yeah, second would be horses, and then third would be cattle. I'd love for more to be cattle. That's just not the reality today.
Right.
And so there's some recreational ranching goes on too, but majority of them have a very, very heavy hunting focus. And you look at the size of the hunting economy with respect to ATVs, side-by-sides, deer blinds, deer feed, guns, bows, broadheads, knives, camo. Holy moly.
Hotel, motel.
Yeah. And
cafes.
Are you scared yet?
Right.
It scares me.
Yeah. And that's the message. I think that you answered your own question. I think we should be a little more reality based about it. And I think that it's
very different than the ag economy because, again, agriculture, you can manage it. You can put your hands on them.
That's right.
There will likely be labeled products. So The screwworm, let me talk a little bit more about the biology of the fly. The screwworm fly is very different than the horn fly. I learned all this from Dr. Lansford. And again, listeners, you do yourself a favor and go back and listen to that episode
Yes,
with
I
Dr.
agree.
T.R. Lansford. It's very good. He explains what I'm going to hit on here briefly. Your horn flies live around the manure. Okay, so in my horse stalls, and when I go in the horse stalls, there's horn flies all over the ground. That's just your regular old flies around your livestock. They're all over the ground. They're all over the manure piles. They're on the horse's legs and all this stuff. Very different behavior than a screwworm. The screwworms spend their time on plants until they smell the wound. They come inspect the wound. They lay their larvae there. So spraying my horse stalls every day is not going to hurt. It's general fly control, but I'm likely not killing the screwworm fly by spraying my manure piles and doing that. So it's a harder fly to control. It's different than spraying your cows for, coming by your cows with permethrin and spraying your flies' backs with permethrin. It's different than that because the flies are not living on the adult screwworm fly.
Over there.
They're over there in the brush somewhere.
Yeah.
They're not living on the backs of the cows. They're not in and around the livestock all day. The live fly is not like the horn fly is, like your common fly is. And so treating the fly is different. The other thing is, I'm sure Texas Animal Health Commission and USDA will approve labeled treatment, feed-throughs, injectables, pour-ons, sprays for livestock. Texas Parks and Wildlife is not likely to approve those things for indigenous native wildlife, namely whitetail deer.
Right. Myself and several others
So
have been.
treatment becomes really, it almost becomes impossible. You almost have to let the ag community treat it and let the government release the flies. And that almost becomes, if you're operating within label.
Right. And that's the key. The labels are so specific, too specific, and they purposely exclude wildlife.
Yeah.
So the wildlife person, his options are pretty short because there's nothing, quote, approved, labeled for it. So if you do use anything that's out there for cattle, sheep, and goat guys, it's off label. Mm-hmm. So that's against a bunch of rules, regulations, federal law, that kind of stuff for commercial development. So so a feed manufacturer can't go put it in a pellet.
Yeah, they can't make the only two that I'm aware of, is ivermectin and Dectomax are the only two that I'm aware of that have efficacy against the screwworm. And so if you worm your cows with ivermectin, they have some immunity to those maggots for a period of time. I don't know what the efficacy period is. Dectomax, same thing. The challenge is neither one of those are very palatable. And so you could feed a feed through to horses and cattle, which is manure activated. So they eat the pellet. It passes through them when they defecate on the ground. That manure activates, and that will kill the hornfly larva, not the screwworm.
Right.
Not the screwworm. And ivermectin and Dectomax are not very palatable, so it's hard to get them to eat it. So even if you were to go, if it were to be labeled a deer feed that had those in it, which they won't do, but if you were to get a deer feed that was legal to feed in the pasture to wild deer, it would have to have Dectomax or ivermectin in it, right?
Right. Either or. One of them works slightly better than the other. Now, the half-life of ivermectin is 2.8 days. So oral. So if you're giving animals, like to your point, you're treating corn and you give it to an animal orally, the half-life is 2.8 days.
What's half-life mean? What does that mean?
That means it's efficacy, basically. Okay. So by the end of, when you double that, so what is that, 5 days? At the end of 5 days, there's not enough ivermectin left in the body to defend itself against screwworm.
Okay.
So to answer your question, if you're going to treat corn with ivermectin orally to whitetail deer, you need to do it every 5 days.
Got it.
That's the answer. So then, does that become possible? Labor, financial, that kind of stuff.
Just availability of ivermectin pour on.
Yeah, we should have bought stock in that about 3 days ago. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm sure there's a run on that stuff. Now, Dectomax works a little bit better, has a little more longer, better half-life. But the thing about Dectomax over ivermectin is it bonds to corn. In particular, it bonds to corn. It's got a little more stick-to-itedness. Glycol, I can't remember the fancy name, but anyway, there's a chemical there that allows it to. Whereas the ivermectin has a little bit more water, and the water is subject to evaporation. Now, one thing about ivermectin, if you treat corn and you spray it on the road, and this is really important for managers to understand this, that UV light, ultraviolet light, breaks down the molecules in the ivermectin. So if you're going to treat corn, you're going to treat alfalfa, you're going to treat cottonseed, just know that when you put it out there, the ultraviolet light immediately starts breaking it down from a molecular level. So if you're going to use it, put it out late in the evening. So like during the day right now, go out there and make your batches and do all your witchcraft and do all your mixing, but keep it in the barn in the shade or under the shade tree, but put it out tonight. So put it out tonight, this evening, in a road feeder, drive all your roads so that the corn's out there this evening all night long and in the morning out of direct sunlight until, let's just say, 9:30 in the morning. So the corn's laying on the road for what is that, 14 hours, so that you're increasing your availability to all those other animals we talked about.
Everything that's
rats,
a host.
Rabbits, mice, quail, turkey, rah.
Yeah.
And then
hogs,
right now,
even the hogs have
yeah.
is all of it.
Yeah,
they're all hosts.
A dead hog is going to mass produce more screwworms. So we are concerned about feral hogs, javelinas. How many ranches in South Texas have javelinas? I don't know the hard answer, but I can tell you it's a lot. It's a whole lot. So we need to medicate our javelinas because, again, they're just going to help produce more adult flies. So put this ivermectin-treated stuff out in the evening so that it lays there longer and it's more exposure to more animals. But direct sunlight interferes with the molecular composition of ivermectin. And Dectomax will last a little longer, but Dectomax is not as common. It's not as readily available.
Yeah.
And then there's some discussions to have about injectable versus liquid pour-on. Now, the injectable is better, but it's more expensive. Smaller volume. You know, you put it out in cc's versus ounces. You see what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
So you got to be careful. So ivermectin is not ivermectin is not ivermectin. You need to understand, is it injectable ivermectin or is it oral liquid ivermectin? And so that's a different animal. So you need to make sure that you understand that because they need to be treated a lot different. So the oral application will work. It's just as effective as the injectable, however, the dosage rate is not 1x. It's not 1-to-1. So in other words, if somebody tells you the dosage to give your animal of injectable ivermectin, it's not comparable if you're going to do it orally.
Sure. Yeah.
It starts at 2x. So let's just say, for example, let's just talk about a real number. So I say, Kasey, you need to give your horse, 3 cc's of injectable. And
well, ivermectin's 1 cc to 100 weight. So you have 300-pound hog. Like at the feed store this morning, they got ivermectin bottles. I had to get some horse wormer anyway, so I was looking right there, and it's 1 mil per 100 weight for cattle and swine. Injectable ivermectin. Okay.
So that's injectable.
Yep, that's injectable.
But all you have now, because you didn't buy that this morning, you messed up. So you go back after the podcast to buy it, and all they have is liquid.
They're gone.
Yeah, you screwed up, dude. You missed the boat. That ship is done sailed. So all they have is pour on.
Yeah.
And you thought, well, heck, he just told me 1 cc per 100 weight. Well, that's not the case because now you're dealing with a different delivery.
Yeah.
So it's at least 2x, and in some cases it's 3x. So oral is just as effective as injectable, but you've got to adjust the dosage, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you just got, like I say, there's a lot of information on the internet and Facebook. You just got to be real careful about, are you talking about injectable or are you talking about liquid pour-on?
Yeah.
Same drug, but the dosage is radically different. So just heads up on that.
You mentioned some stuff earlier about like mass fogging permethrin in the pastures. Certainly if you have deer pens, fans on the side of the deer pens.
Right.
Like you might see at a vineyard where it's used to blow the dew in the mornings out. I think you will see some people that put fans, just like we have fans in our barns, horse barns, cattle barns, dairy barns. You have fans, hog barns, you have fans, keep air moving, keep the flies moving. You could have fans to blow that permethrin through. on some rotation, and that's it. And permethelin's an insecticide. If you see bug spray, most of bug sprays are permethrin.
Yeah.
So you'll have that. You're obviously going to have some non-target kill there for sure to be concerned with.
For sure.
Yeah, you will have some non-target if you do that. But I'm just wondering what wildlife managers can do, Macy, at the moment.
Yeah. So let's just revert back, talk about the breeder deer, those guys that are holding those whitetail deer in captivity under special permit. They've been fogging and insecticizing their pens for years.
Yeah, those guys are going to be okay here.
Right.
Yeah.
But so we can learn from that.
Yeah.
So you could have a manual handheld fogger, kind of looks like a leaf blower. It's got a little tank. You can pour permethrin in it, and you could fog. You could get on the upwind side of your DMP pens, for example. So you're not fogging the deer, but you're fogging the pins. And again, you were just explaining the life cycle. That female fly hangs out in the plants. So you could fog the habitat of a DMP pen, for example. This morning I was on the phone talking about with drone sprayers. We are going to employ drone herbicide applications, again, over some pen situations, some high value target areas. We're going to use drones to permethrin some of the habitat.
Insecticide, not herbicide.
Insecticide, that's right. Insecticide, that's right. Yeah. So we're going to throw the book at this thing because I think it's all hands on deck. I don't think this is something we should sit back and let the government handle it because their pretty brochure said they have it handled. You can't rely on somebody else to take care of your business, especially your huge financial.
10 hours before this confirmed case in Zavala County, there was a government representative said, this is all fear mongering, nothing to worry about. It's still south of the border. And then it shows up 45 miles.
How quickly things can change.
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. That's a great example. So while that conversation was being had, the other end of the spectrum was happening and they didn't even know about it. That's cool. I understand. It's a big world. But yeah, how quickly things can change. And that's to our earlier conversation about deer breeders wanting to get out of, or people getting away from whitetail, getting into exotics.
Yeah.
Is again, because the situation, the scenario can be so fluid, it can literally change by the hour. So your 5-year written management plan is
now, if you have
hard.
exotics, let's move from whitetail and talk specifically about exotics. You could feed exotics a treated feed.
Yes, that's right. Yes, they're again
no
they're
different than
classified as
cattle
livestock.
horses.
Yeah, they're livestock.
Yeah.
So
now there'll be some labels for cattle for consumption, human consumption.
Yes.
Right. That's if I'm understanding right. That's what the labels would deal with on cattle. Is if they're going into the food source, there's
withdrawal
periods and things.
Right.
That's what the labels will deal with.
Yeah. So you if you're a super exotic, super species, the higher dollar, you more than likely have a relationship, a working relationship with a veterinarian.
Yep.
And that in itself is extremely valuable. Yeah. And you can get exceptions, you can get prescriptions, you can get exceptions for off-label and what they call minor species. So stuff like you and I can't go down to the local Tractor Supply and say, hey, I've got, a pen full of Simmental horned oryx, and they sell you something legally. They can't do that legally. Yeah. But if you have a working relationship with a veterinarian, he can write you a prescription that is an exception to the rule. Let's say you have endangered species or something like that. Again, you're going to most likely have a working relationship already in place of a veterinarian, a wildlife veterinarian. And there's not very many of those folks.
There'll be some of the feed manufacturers make a feed that's
right.
that you can purchase.
Right. And so you want to jump on that with both feet, and you want to get started immediately because, again, it all works until it doesn't. And this fly apparently is going to be able to show up when we're least expecting it because Zavala County, I measured it on my Onyx. I'm very familiar with that particular property, 45 miles inland. So, we were talking from the border. Yeah. So from the Rio Grande due east, I measured it on Onyx because I know the western fence line of the property we're talking about, 45 linear miles interior from the border. Now, I hesitate to even bring this up, but this morning I got a call from a couple of people that I deem reliable that also yesterday in Dilley, Texas, 4 other cases of suspected screwworm were gathered by veterinarians and sent to Ames, Iowa. So probably today or tomorrow we will know yes or no if that's
as far as Dilley from La Pryor.
I haven't measured that, hour and a half drive,
Yeah.
but if you look at Dilley, Texas, it's central South Texas.
It's a lot further than 45 miles.
Further, yeah, a lot further, yeah. So again, I'm not saying that this is going to come to fruition, and I hesitate to even bring it up here, but I think, again, we want to talk about reality. We want to talk about not scaring people, but informing people. So if all of a sudden it shows up 45 miles away near Batesville, and then the next day or two it's in Dilley, Texas, you might want to ratchet up your thinking and your preparedness, because I believe we need to take this a little more serious maybe than the general public has. Now, I know the agencies.
That is the isolated, solo, singular first case.
Yeah, we're not done. We're not done. I'm telling you right now, we're not done with this. If it shows up 45 miles away, we're not done. Unfortunately, we're not done. Yeah. So prepare yourself, educate yourself, and reality is amongst us. Reality is here. So you're going to have that uncomfortable conversation. So start buying the equipment, start talking to the ranch manager, start talking to the ranch foremans. What exactly are we going to do? How are we going to do it? How much time are we going to allot to it? And that's the reality of it. It's not fear-mongering at all. We're not hyperbole, but you should have that very uncomfortable conversation, maybe even with your neighbors.
Yeah.
It's time that neighbors join together, not fight across the high fence because they have different goals and objectives, because your neighbor is going to impact you. And that's something that we probably don't need to talk about much, because you and Dr. Langford did a great job, is the surveillance zones, the infestation zones.
Yeah, I heard those are going to be a 50-mile radius, which would be the quarantine zone for livestock. Now, I don't know what, I was going to ask you this. If it shows up in deer and you don't have livestock there, because there's a bunch of ranches that don't, they're destocked because of drought or just different goals. Is there going to be a quarantine zone there? You report to Texas Parks and Wildlife. They have a similar quarantine zone?
They're going to use the same playbook. And so it's going to be, they're talking about initially 20 miles, I think it is.
Okay.
20 miles. And then it can be, if it's, that, so it's on a particular case. So let's just talk about if this case in Zavala County was a deer. I know it's not, but we got to talk about it.
It was a baby calf.
Yeah, but let's say it was a whitetail deer. Well, then 20 miles around the ranch in all directions is going to be their initial infestation zone. So all of the neighbors, all the ranches within 20 miles, they would have enhanced testing, fly trapping, enhanced monitoring, so that those animals would have to be subject to more testing. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
On the neighbor. Now, let's say they go out 19 miles and they find another one, in another whitetail deer or feral hog. They're going to do another 20-mile circle around that feral hog, for example, that was on the edge of the original one. And it's going to get to a point where it's going to continue to morph out, 20 miles, 20 miles. Well, after about the second or third extension, they're going to stop and they're going to do a regional extension. And they're going to go 124 miles. You need to look at that on a map. So if you're in Zavala County, let's say you're in Dilley. Let's just say worst case scenario. Again, no hyperbole, not trying to scare anybody, but let's say Dilley pops 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 cases and we have to go 124 miles. That's north of San Antonio.
Yeah.
And again, it's roughly a circle, not exactly. They're going to use highways and some obvious borders, but for this conversation, just think of a 124-mile circle from Dilley north, Dilley south, Dilley east, Dilley west. What's that going to look like? It's going to encompass
the whole southern part of the state.
South Texas. That's right. What is that going to look like logistically? What's that going to look like financially? What is that going to look like to your lease hunters? You're making good money this year, and all of a sudden you're in this 124-mile zone. What
can you not do with them? I mean, we're not talking about trapping and transporting deer anyway. So just as a lease hunter, what's it do to me?
So a lease hunter, that if
or
it gets
package hunter, I go to South Texas to kill a deer. What's that do to me?
So they may, just like they did in the cattle fever tick, because they're following the same cattle fever tick response plan. And so in that case, you would have to freeze the hide. So if it's a trophy buck, you'd have to cape him or put this whole head in a freezer for like 48 hours and before you can leave the ranch. Now, the deer that aren't trophies, you can throw them in a pit and bury them or burn them. In other words, there's carcass disposal rules. Because again, remember what we're talking about. A carcass promotes more flies. A live animal doesn't at the moment because it's being eaten alive. But as soon as it falls over dead, It's a mass.
It's when they go from larva to fly.
So they're going to say, okay, Kasey, you killed 20. Your hunters killed 20 does. So you got to go dig a pit and bury those does every time you put a doe in there. Well, I don't have a tractor. Okay, well, go get 2 shovels. Well, I'm in Sonora. I'm in Solid Rock. Okay, well, Kasey, pile them up and burn them.
Taylor, you could probably make a living digging holes for
That'd be a great idea.
Yeah. That'd be good. Your arms will look great.
So you can get one of those mini excavators in your pickup, and you be the mobile disposal guy. So you just go around poking holes and burying dead stuff. So put some Vicks up your nose, put one of those COVID face masks on and show up with your mobile digging trench. And so, I mean, what's it going to look like? You should have those realistic conversations. So, it's going to be extremely disruptive.
I'd say so.
And what if people don't do it and they start illegally transporting carcasses? And you see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So this thing, again, you just got to be prepared for reality. And I think that we're not been very prepared for reality. So I think it's a wake-up call. I think we should. And I think this conversation is worth having. And I appreciate you bringing it up because not a lot of people have talked about the possibilities. And again, I will come up here next year and say, Kasey, I can't believe I was that wrong. I feel stupid, but I'm sure glad I'm wrong. Yeah, I hope I'm the wrongest person.
I've never been sad to be overly prepared.
I want to be the wrongest guy in Texas. Yeah. I really do. I want to look back on this in a year and laugh about it.
Well, Macy, I appreciate you coming up very much. We've been 2.5 hours talking about some huge issues, definitely facing our state. All of that said, it's a great time to be a Texas landowner.
Yes, sir.
And I think the experiment of wildlife management in the state of Texas is unrivaled anywhere in the world.
Yes, sir.
I think the professionalism that we have here, the results that we've had here, the science we've proven here, and the benefits to our landowners in the state of Texas, it's unrivaled anywhere in the world.
I agree with that.
So I appreciate you and the people that do such a good job. I appreciate our clients that invest in it and keep you and I employed. And
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's an honor to
with or without screwworm. Yeah. I got to throw that in there. Yeah.
With or without screwworms.
We build ponds and we catch fish too.
That's it. That's exactly right. And this will create other opportunities for other people, and that's just the truth of it. And we'll evolve. We'll make it through. So we appreciate you. Where can people follow Spring Creek? Are y'all on social media or anything?
Yes, sir. No, I appreciate that opportunity. So the name of the company is Spring Creek Outdoors, and we're both on the Instagram, Facebook, and of course the website.
Okay.
So we do a little bit of Facebook. We're not huge on it, but we do a little bit of, or social media, I should say. But check us out, springcreekoutdoors.com. We have 2 other biologists. So myself, my son Wade, he lives in Mason. We have Matt, he lives in Poth, kind of south of San Antonio, I guess you'd say, southeast, and my wife. So it's a family operation, a family of 4, 3-degree biologists, and then my wife works behind the scenes, much like yours, and keeps us all looking smart, does all the minutia behind the behind the scenes so we can stay on the front lines. And we do geospatial mapping and
all
fisheries,
sorts of things.
Everything, tax plans. I mean, just pretty much anything that's ranch related.
A great podcast. You were on Austin Praden's Drop Time Studios podcast about a month ago.
Yes, sir.
And it was really good. So if y'all want to go see the fun stuff that Macy does, not just disease and parasite control. Right. If you want to if you want to listen to like really legitimate high-end wildlife management, the fun parts of it, animal husbandry, wildlife management, the results-oriented stuff, I'd encourage you to go listen to Austin's podcast with Macy, Drop Time Studios, because y'all did a great job talking about the fun parts of it.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And I want to kudos to you as well as Austin. I listen to both of y'all's podcasts religiously because I can't wait, because the way y'all both structure this is 100% education.
Has to be.
Not entertainment.
Yeah.
I don't listen to, nor can I stand a single podcast that's based on entertainment. But I will listen to anything that's education because we learn every day, and we don't know it all. But I want to, my hats off to you and the scope and the diversity of your interviewees. It's been wonderful, and so sometimes it's out of my bailiwick, it's out of my comfort zone. But I listen because I learn every day, and particularly Section 80 stuff you had on recently.
That's pretty good, wasn't it?
I took about 2 pages of handwritten notes. I'm not going to lie to you. I know about Section 80, but I don't know the level of that. Yeah. So that was very good. But anyway.
That's why I do it. If nobody listens, I'm learning.
Right. But no, again, hats off to you specifically.
Thanks.
You're doing a great job of talking about ranching and managing ROI and bottom line and spreadsheets. Man, that's stuff that has to be talked about. It may not be the entertainment value that somebody's looking for, but from the educational value, the professionalism, owning ranches, selling ranches, holding that land for the next generation, you have to understand that. You have to be aware of it. The things that the wildlife partners are doing, that's critical. Whether you know about exotics or want to use exotics, you need to be aware of the tools. The tax code is ridiculous. And so, the points that have been brought out on this podcast about the tax code, and not just the tax code, but the specific numbers and page number and
what to go ask your CPA.
Exactly. And if the CPA doesn't know, fire their ass and go get one that does. Yeah, go get another. I mean, that's good stuff, brother. That's not hyperbole. Fire their ass in them pack and go get one that does.
Exactly right.
So that is reality. That's raw reality. And my hat's off to you. And so I appreciate you for inviting me here. It's good to be back in Stephenville, Texas. And I appreciate everything you're doing, and keep it up, brother.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
That wraps us up. I appreciate you listening to the Landowner Insider. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to follow the show, leave us a review, and share it with another Texas landowner. For more insights, listings, and resources for Texas landowners, visit mockranches.com. Till next time, I'm Kasey Mock, your host. This has been the Landowner Insider. Go get 'em.